I've got to say, global warming warriors don't know whether to laugh or cry about this bit of news I'm about to tell you, because mining giant BHP is getting out of oil and gas. Gone. It's already been getting out of coal too. It's gone green, you see. Oh, global warming. And it says it wants to get into more future-focused businesses, which implies that there's none for fossil fuels. So it's going to stick with iron ore. But wait a minute, what melts iron ore? Is that coal? Anyway, never mind that. It's going to stick with its iron ore, but also copper, nickel and potash, which is useful for agriculture. So it's, like I said, it's getting rid of its oil and gas assets.
It's worth remembering that the BHP shareholders will still have exposure into the business. So what we will see is that we'll have still 48% of the merged entity owned by BHP. And what it does create is a more resilient business that is focused on the energy transition that the world needs to go through.
Okay, so far it sounds a bit like a win for activist shareholders, for the green groups. Not so good for real shareholders who want a bit of return, because BHP's share price just dropped 7%. But what BHP has actually done here is merge its gas and oil business with Woodside Petroleum's a $20 billion deal that leaves Woodside with majority control of what's now going to be the biggest energy company on our stock exchange. And that's not so happy news for climate extremists. Well, joining me to figure out what's going on here is the former Resources Minister, Senator Matt Canavan of the Nationals. Matt, always great to talk to you. What is going on here? BHP says it has nothing to do with its global warming policies, but it does say shareholders can now choose to either keep their shares in this joint venture or get out and be pure, I guess. Is it about global warming or isn't it?
Well, Andrew, I think it's a bit from column A and a bit from column B. Yes, BHP has made it pretty clear they want to get out of fossil fuels, but it's very important to note the way they're exiting or planning to exit fossil fuels. If they really truly believed it was evil and terrible, why don't they just give it away? Why don't they just give the assets away for $1 or something, and leave it? But that's not what they're doing. What they do, and a lot of these companies do this, is they sell it, and they take a lot of pains to sell it at its market value. And what the market value is simply the capitalisation of all the future profits. So the way we value companies is add up all the profits in the future that you might get from running a coal mine or an offshore oil rig, and then you pay a price up front to represent those future profits. And so really here, what BHP has done is just simply got the profits from fossil fuel sales in the future today. So they're not green. They're not doing anything particularly benevolent for the client. They're simply maximising their profits. The thing, though, that does pain me here, and the other aspects of this, no doubt part of this is the repositioning of BHP and where they want to invest in the future. But I think a lot of the history of these oil and gas assets that BHP own has been lost. This was a major epoch-changing investment for Australia. It came in 1960, the deal was done. They brought a geologist out from the US, Lewis Weeks. He immediately told the chairman the best way, or the place to find oil in Australia was in the Bass Strait. And they went down there, not far from where you are, Andrew, and found a massive oil province. And people don't realise that saw this country through the 1970s oil crisis, because when that hit in the 1970s, Australia was self-sufficient in petroleum production. In fact, as recently as 20 years ago, we produced 96% of our raw petroleum needs. Today, that figure is 48%. In 2 decades, we've gone from being self-sufficient to less than half of our oil production because the Bass Strait has declined. That asset has reached the end of its life in terms of an oil-producing asset.
And of course, look,
and so what we should be doing is finding a new province. But BHP aren't doing that. They're going to Canada.
Yeah, but you've got to... great. But you've got to ban, of course, an offshore exploration for gas in Victoria. You've had fracking restrictions and bans in many parts of the country. It's just crazy what we're doing to ourselves. But here's the strange thing, of course. Here's BHP saying it's all pure, it's going to look future business, getting rid of all those yucky ones so that it doesn't have activist shareholders saying, why are we in gas and oil? It says, well, look, you can take your shares out of the joint venture or not. I don't care anymore. That's not us. But the thing is, it said iron ore. But what smelts iron ore? is coal. If coal's got not a future, nor does iron ore, I'd suggest. And by the way, it's now hock to China. China's going to be its big buyer. And what happens if China says, you're Australian, we don't want you?
Well, the most disappointing thing about this, Andrew, is that the big Australian, and I'm very proud of BHP and their history. They've got a lot to be proud of. Great Australian company. But they don't have any big plans. The big Australian does not have big plans for Australia. Their big plans at the moment are to invest in a potash mine in Canada, and that may very well be a great investment, but it's not here in Australia. And going back to that investment, that epoch-changing investment made in the 1960s by BHP, it's very clear, reading the history of BHP, that the then leaders of the company were, yes, trying to make money. They were definitely in there to make a profit, but they also were trying to do something for Australia. They were proud Australians. They were patriotic about this country. And they grew up during and through both world wars, knowing that this country had to fend for itself and therefore find oil, which was it still is a key ingredient to the modern economy. I mean, how are we getting people out of Kabul right now? We're not doing it from solar power. We're not doing it through batteries. We are putting a whole lot of jet fuel into big C-17 Hercules airplanes to fly over there and get people out. And if you are not self-sufficient in fossil fuels, you cannot defend your own country. And right now, we are not self-sufficient in that, despite having this massive landscape. There are plenty of areas to still drill and find for oil around this country. You're right to say the red tape is out of control. That is a big barrier. But it's also the case that our companies now, many of our companies, do not see themselves as patriotic Australians first and foremost. No. They do pursue a whole lot of other
I think they've run
a lot of other agendas. There's a whole lot of other agendas that have got nothing to do with profit.
Matt, they are running scared of the green activists. They don't like their little annual meetings being hijacked by green protests and all that. They don't like all this, threats that banks won't invest in it. So they just go for the easy option.